You've felt it lately, haven't you? The room got louder, but your mind got quieter. One more headline, one more hot take, one more share you barely remember reading until the consequences land on someone's life. A kid's face misidentified by a viral post. A meeting where everyone nodded and something catastrophic followed. A family chat thread that used to be love and jokes. Now a trench of slogans and suspicion. We are drowning in information and starving for thought. Somewhere between the swipe and the outrage, you started outsourcing your judgment to the crowd, to the feed, to the people who profit when you stop asking questions, and when you finally pause long enough to hear yourself think, a colder fear rises. What if I've been easy to steer? What if my certainty has been for sale this whole time? This is not a video about being smart. It's about being free. Because when critical thinking dies, freedom doesn't explode. It fades, quietly, predictably, profitably. Tonight, we'll trace the machinery that manufactures your confidence, meet the case studies they hope you've forgotten, and define the one condition eating your agency from the inside. If you can stand the light, keep watching. If not, the algorithm will tuck you back to sleep. One, the oath to truth definition and the dashboard. Freedom does not vanish with a bang. It fades. It fades each time a culture pays more for noise than for thought. That slow thinning is the true danger. It turns confidence into a product and attention into a leash. When I say collective stupidity, I am not insulting anyone's IQ. I am naming a system state. It is a predictable pattern where public reasoning gets worse even while individuals may be smart. You can be educated and successful and still get pulled into a climate that makes shallow judgment feel normal. The pattern shows up in 4 ways. Falsehood outruns repair. Bad claims move fast. Corrections move slow. The first headline sticks. The update whispers. Identity beats evidence. Facts turn into loyalty signals. Changing your mind feels like betraying your side. Dialogue collapses. We trade arguments for slogans. We perform for our crowd and lose a shared vocabulary. Incentives turn perverse. Platforms pay out on speed, outrage, and certainty. Nuance and humility do not trend. Definition matters because measurement matters. Without a hard edge to the term, we drift into scolding and vibes. With a firm definition, we can track whether we are healing or not. Think of a simple dashboard with 4 dials: cognition, behavior, system, discourse. Turn them up, and public thought gets healthier. Turn them down, and it decays. Dial 1 is cognition. Can people do the work of thinking when faced with news-like passages? Can they spot missing baselines and base rate errors? Can they tell a cause from a coincidence when shown a clear refutation? Can they explain why it works, not just that it exists? Dial 2 is behavior. What do people actually do in the wild? Do they open and read before they share? After a claim is debunked, do they remove it, annotate it, or share the correction? Do we see real moments where beliefs update in response to new evidence? Dial 3 is system. What does the infrastructure reward? How diverse are the sources that appear in a typical feed over time? Do we see healthy friction, like want to read before sharing, or only accelerators that favor speed? When an outlet corrects an error, does the correction receive visibility comparable to the original claim? Dial 4 is discourse. How do we speak to one another in public? Do people fairly summarize the strongest version of the view they oppose before they critique it? Do conversations survive beyond the first spike of outrage, or do they collapse into performance and purity tests? Now a case, April 2013. The Boston Marathon had just been bombed. A major New York tabloid ran a front page that circled 2 young men and called them bag men. They were not suspects. They were not charged. They were 2 strangers caught in the lens of panic. The cover spread quickly through newsstands, TV panels, and social feeds. It felt definitive. It felt true. Days later, the paper published a correction. The men had been cleared. Watch the dashboard light up. Cognition struggled. The public blurred suspicion with proof. Behavior tilted towards sharing the accusation and ignoring the retraction. System forces magnified the asymmetry. The original claim had front-page prominence and viral reach. The correction landed with far less visibility and far less stickiness in memory. Discourse degraded. The spectacle remained. The apology faded. The names and faces of the two men carried reputational shrapnel long after the news cycle moved on. This is visibility asymmetry. The claim has a jet engine. The correction has a bicycle. Memory tends to keep the jet. The curve is cruel. Velocity goes up. Repair goes down. Confidence rises. Understanding falls. The lesson is not that errors should never happen. Errors are part of life. The lesson is that our climate rewards the first blast and forgets the fix. The case is not about one tabloid, one day, one mistake. It is a mirror for our information environment. Platform logic boosts heat over light. Newsroom logic rewards speed over care. Human logic prefers certainty over doubt, especially when identity is on the line. In that triangle of incentives, collective stupidity is not an insult. It is an outcome. So we return to definition and measurement. Because rhetoric is cheap, indicators are not on cognition. We track critical reading and error recognition. On behavior, we track read before share and acceptance of corrections. On system, we track feed diversity and prominence parity between the claim and the fix. On discourse, we track cross-partisan citation and the lifespan of real conversation after the outrage spike. Set those indicators near zero and you get a doom scroll, a culture of fast certainty and shallow judgment. Nudge them upward and you get a culture that can disagree without breaking and change its mind without losing its soul. That is why this first part matters. We are not hunting a smart take. We are rebuilding the conditions for freedom. Critical thinking does not die in a spectacle. It fades quietly and profitably. Unless we see it, name it, measure it, and keep the oath to truth. 2. The flood in the crowd, information overload, and social proof. There is more to read than any person can read. There is more to watch than any person can watch. The feed never ends. Under that pressure, the brain reaches for shortcuts. It must. Attention is finite. The stream is not. Information overload is not just volume. It is volume plus speed plus fragmentation. Too much input, too little time, too many clips cut out of context. Working memory buckles. Focus narrows. Fast judgments feel safe because they cost less energy. One of those fast judgments is social proof. Social proof treats engagement as a stand-in for truth. If a post has 1 million views, it must matter. If a take has 100,000 likes, it must be right. If everyone I follow says the same thing, it must be settled. But engagement measures stimulus, not accuracy. It tells you what travels, not what holds up. In overload, the metric becomes the message. System 1 scans for cues. The biggest cue is the crowd. Likes, shares, comments, stitches, duets. The brain reads the room and calls it reality. Everyone is saying it hardens into, it is the case. Confidence rises before understanding does. A case from the United States makes the pattern concrete. January 2019. A short clip from the Lincoln Memorial goes viral. A high school student in a red cap stands face to face with a Native American elder. The clip races across Twitter and television. Outrage surges. Narratives lock within hours. Then longer footage appears. The lead-up looks more complicated than the first clip suggested. Some outlets add editors' notes and clarifications. Lawsuits and later settlements enter the story. For our purposes, the key is not final blame. The key is how perception formed and then resisted revision. Watch the dashboard. Cognition struggles when a fragment stands in for an event. Behavior tilts towards sharing the first clip and ignoring the context dump that follows. System incentives push the spike. The short, hot fragment gets recommendation lift. The slow, cold correction gets less reach and less memory. Discourse degrades as positions become identity. Apologies, when they appear, travel less than the initial frame. This is the default setting of the attention economy. Short out competes long, hot out competes cool, Crowd signals outcompete source evaluation. And when identity enters, social proof becomes social armor. To revise your view feels like leaving your people. The cost of accuracy starts to feel like the cost of belonging. If we could plot it, we would see the same curve again and again. A sharp spike for the first frame, a shallow slope for the correction, a long tail in memory that favors the original impression. Velocity beats verification. The room remembers the heat, not the fix. So we measure what we can. Click-through before share, how often people open a source before reposting it. Median watch time before repost, how long a clip is viewed before it is spread. Half-life of misinformation versus correction, how quickly each decays in the network. Prominence parity, whether updates and editors' notes receive visibility comparable to the headline that set the fire. None of these numbers tell you what to believe. They tell you how belief is formed when the room is too loud. They show why a lot of people saw it is not the same as it stands up. Overload is the weather. Social proof is the umbrella we grab without thinking. It feels useful in a storm. Under clear light, you see the holes, and the holes are exactly where certainty leaks out. 3. Outrage for sale. The engagement economy and the shape of the medium. Platforms do not sell content. They sell attention. The product is your next second. The price is your patience. In that market, outrage is premium fuel. It is fast to feel. It is cheap to trigger. It is expensive to undo. Engagement optimization sounds neutral. It is not. It means the system rewards anything that spikes clicks, comments, reactions, and session time. The metric becomes the map. The map becomes the territory. Soon, the best performing story is the loudest one, not the truest one. The medium is the message is more than a slogan. Format shapes thinking. A 6-word chyron, a 12-second clip, an autoplay loop, an infinite scroll. Each trims context to fit the frame. Each trains the mind to prefer the burst over the argument. After enough bursts, argument feels slow, even suspect. Here is the mechanism. Algorithms learn from what you touch. Strong emotions drive fast signals. Anger and fear arrive quicker than care and doubt. Short posts cost less effort than long reads. Visual loops beat transcripts. The system leans toward content that produces immediate, repeatable spikes. That lean is not a glitch. It is the business model working as designed. A U.S. case makes the point plain. Researchers at MIT examined millions of tweets spanning years. They found that false news traveled faster and farther than true news. More people saw it. More people spread it. Not because people became less intelligent overnight, but because novelty and shock produce engagement. And engagement is the coin the system multiplies. The lie had better legs for the race the platform was running. Why did falsehood win the sprint? Surprise beats verification. Novel claims promise social value. I have the hot thing first. True claims often confirm what you already know. They are colder, they are slower. In an engagement market, speed and spread look like merit, so the platform hands the megaphone to whatever moves, then learns to hand it sooner next time. Format deepens the tilt. Think of vertical video built for swipes. A 13-second cut can flatten a 2-hour hearing into a single face, a single sentence, a single smirk. The audience absorbs a feeling in one pass. The rest of the record is invisible. The clip wins the moment. The context loses the week. By the time longer footage circulates, identity has already set like concrete. Watch the dashboard. Cognition suffers when format compresses reasoning. Behavior shifts toward reacting at speed, not evaluating at depth. System incentives magnify the skew the more a post provokes. The more it is seen, the more it is seen, the more it looks important. Discourse degrades as performance replaces inquiry. What plays is what prevails. So we look at indicators, not vibes. Reaction to dwell ratio. Does the system boost pieces that trigger instant emotion over pieces that sustain attention? Distribution lift after strong reactions. How many more impressions a post gets once it trips anger, shock, or laugh badges? Content length mix and recommendations, the share of sub-60-second clips versus long form on the path to acclaim. Prominence parity for corrections, whether fixes are delivered with reach comparable to the spark that needed fixing. Entropy of the recommendation chain, how quickly suggestions collapse into one register of tone and topic. None of these numbers pick a side for you. They reveal what the machine believes success looks like. If interesting beats true in the metric, interesting will beat true in the feed. That is not an accident. That is design. And design is moral when it governs what a culture notices. A frame that pays extra for heat will cool public reason over time. A format that shortens every thought will lengthen every misunderstanding. In that world, the truth is not defeated by argument, it is priced out by attention. For the frame makes the fact manufacturing consent in mainstream media. Newsrooms do more than report what happened. They decide what enters the room and how it is lit. That choice is a frame. And when many outlets share the same frame at the same time, the audience feels a consensus before it sees the evidence. That feeling has a name: manufacturing consent. Manufacturing consent is not a secret meeting. It is a structure of incentives and routines. It is heavy reliance on official sources. It is deadlines that favor ready-made narratives. It is advertising and audience pressures that punish ambiguity. It is professional news judgment that indexes debate to what powerful actors already say. The result is not hidden censorship. The result is a narrow window that looks like the whole view. Framing is the close cousin. Framing is selection and salience. Which facts are chosen? Which words set the tone? Which images anchor the memory? A frame can be accurate and still be partial. A partial frame can be repeated until it feels total. Repetition turns angle into reality. A U.S. case makes this concrete. The run-up to the Iraq War in 2002 and early 2003. Headlines and chyrons poured in about weapons of mass destruction, aluminum tubes, mobile labs, stockpiles, ties and links and intelligence suggests. Dissent existed. Inspectors raised doubts. Some analysts warned that the evidence was weak or misread, but the dissent did not get front-page parody. The frame of urgency did. The public felt a single story. The single story felt decisive. Poll numbers moved with the headlines. They moved with Sunday show lineups that leaned toward officials and surrogates. The mood hardened into now or never. After the invasion, stockpiles did not appear. Years later, long reports and postmortems tried to map what went wrong, but the correction had none of the fire of the claim. Watch how the dashboard lights up. Cognition suffered because an official says was treated as it is proved. Behavior showed mass uptake of the urgent narrative and little amplification of the later nuance. System incentives favored speed, packed journalism, and indexing to government briefings. Discourse narrowed. Skepticism was cast as disloyalty. A tidy binary replaced a messy inquiry. The core problem was prominence and plurality. Prominence is where the story lives and how loud it speaks. Plurality is how many serious alternatives get a real hearing. In the run-up, the claim had page A1 in prime time. The doubts had page A17 and off-hour panels. The frame drew a boundary. Inside were strong words and confident tones. Outside were caveats and long sentences. A nation learned the tone faster than it learned the facts. Note the asymmetry in memory. People remember the first simple headline. They do not remember the later internal review. They remember the vivid prop on a televised speech. They do not remember the footnote that qualified it. When the frame carries heat, the update rarely melts it. The mind keeps the image that moved it first. This outcome does not require bad faith. It only requires a system that rewards alignment with the moment's momentum. Official briefings arrive prepackaged. They come with quotations, charts, and access. Independent analysis arrives slower. It lacks the podium and the seal. When seconds matter, the podium wins. When many outlets race the same clock, the single frame dominates. The dominance feels like truth. So we measure the frame, not just the facts. Front page plurality: how many distinct framings of the same issue lead across major outlets in the same week? Sourcing diversity index, the ratio of official to independent voices in top stories and on Sunday shows. Prominence parity for corrections, whether a correction or postmortem, receives exposure comparable to the claim that defined public memory. Time to correction, the elapsed time between a major claim and a visible, high salience update. Qualifier ratio, how often language signals uncertainty versus certainty when evidence is still contested. We also track the discourse environment that surrounds the frame. Share of airtime granted to dissenting but credentialed experts while decisions are still live. Frequency of steelman presentations of the strongest opposing case. Presence of genuine inter-ideological debate versus staged crossfire. The more these numbers sag, the more the audience experiences one voice with many microphones. The Iraq example is a lesson in how structures make feelings. The feeling of urgency, the feeling of consensus, the feeling that only one path is serious. Those feelings were not facts. They were products of framing, sourcing, and repetition. When the frame broke, it broke late. The cost did not. Manufacturing consent is powerful because it works upstream. It shapes what questions feel already answered. It shapes which experts count as serious. It shapes whether an outlet thinks a caveat is a service or a buzzkill. Over time, those choices tilt the culture toward noise dressed as clarity. They do not kill skepticism outright. They starve it. This is why definition and measurement matter. If we cannot see the frame, we live inside it. If we cannot count the window's width, we mistake it for a wall. A healthy press can be adversarial without being cynical. It can be urgent without being breathless. It can be plural without losing focus. But that health is not a vibe. It is a pattern we can observe. It is a set of dials we can watch. When prominence and plurality rise together, public reason gets stronger. When they fall, consent is manufactured and then mistaken for truth. The lesson is simple and stern. A frame can be precise and still be too small. And when the frame is too small, a nation pays the difference in hindsight. Hive the classroom clock, when scores replace thinking and what debate proves. Schools teach more than subjects. They teach what a culture rewards. When the rewards are speed, compliance, and the single correct answer, a quiet lesson takes root. Do not risk the wrong question. Follow the template. Color inside the lines. Call this compliance-first schooling. It is the blend of high-stakes tests, narrow rubrics, and pacing charts that treat curiosity like drift. Memory beats inquiry. Pace beats depth. Students learn to hunt for what the grader wants, not what the problem means. This does not make anyone less intelligent. It makes thinking look expensive. It makes doubt look dangerous. It makes original questions feel like bad strategy. Short answers replace arguments. Quotes replace analysis. Silence replaces dissent. Now flip the incentives. Enter urban debate. A classroom becomes a round, 2 teams, a judge, a resolution, sources on the table, cross-examination on the clock. The room pays for reasons, not obedience. Debate does not reward guessing the teacher's mood. It rewards building a claim, facing a counterclaim, and revising. It forces reading beyond the textbook. It forces listening without heckling. It forces you to hold 2 ideas at once and test which one carries more weight. Picture a case. A 9th grader in Chicago walks into her first tournament. She is used to worksheets with one right box. In round 1, her opponent cites sources she has never seen. She feels behind. She asks a question anyway. She presses for warrants, not slogans. She loses. She reads all weekend. She returns with a thicker file and a calmer voice. By spring, her essays have structure. Her lab write-ups have reasons, not just results. Her IQ did not change. The room changed what it paid for. Urban debate leagues report the same pattern. More pages read, more sources cited, clearer writing, better attendance, higher odds of staying through graduation. Not because debate is magic, because the incentive structure flips. Evidence beats deference. Revision beats recitation. Watch the dashboard. Cognition rises when students separate claim from warrant and cause from coincidence. Behavior shifts when they read before they speak and revise after they listen. System incentives inside the class change when grades value argument quality over answer length. Discourse matures when disagreement is a rule set, not a social rupture. Now the measurements. Reading comprehension that tests reasoning, not recall. Writing rubrics that score use of evidence and counter-argument, not just grammar. Tournament artifacts you can audit number of sources, diversity of sources, clarity of warrants, effectiveness of refutation, attendance across a season, because sustained effort is part of depth. Longitudinal outcomes that families feel staying in school, applying to college, entering courses that require argument, not regurgitation. These numbers do not tell students what to think. They show what happens when a room pays for thinking itself. Points are not understanding. Speed is not judgment. A bell schedule can train a habit of mind without ever saying the words. 6. The fast mind, the slow mind confirmation bias and identity. The human mind runs on two clocks. One is fast, one is slow. The fast mind is automatic. It jumps, it feels, it protects energy. The slow mind is deliberate. It pauses, it calculates, it spends energy to make sense. In an always-on world, the fast mind dominates. Pings and scrolls keep it in charge. The slow mind needs quiet and time. The feed denies both. So snap judgments multiply. Careful judgments shrink. Confirmation bias thrives under speed. It is the habit of favoring what fits and dismissing what conflicts. Evidence becomes a costume we dress our beliefs in. We search for allies, not answers. Each yes we find makes the next yes easier. Identity makes the bias stronger. Call it identity protective cognition. When a claim touches who we are, our politics, our tribe, our status, the cost of updating rises. The fact is no longer a fact. It is a loyalty test. Changing your mind feels like changing your team. A U.S. case makes this plain. The pandemic turned masks and vaccines into identity symbols. The same charts, the same studies, the same curves received through different doors. In some counties, public health briefings were read as civic duty. In others, the same briefings were read as control. Cable segments split, local Facebook groups split, church parking lots and school board meetings split. Watch the pattern. People did not process a paper and then decide a stance. Many picked a stance first and then picked a paper. A preprint that aligned with the group got instant traction. A stronger study that cut against the group got picked apart for flaws. If an expert was our expert, credentials were decisive. If an expert was their expert, credentials were suspect. Two realities, one data set. This was not about IQ. Nurses, engineers, teachers, and contractors on both sides used sharp minds in service of fixed identities. They compared sources, they made charts, they argued from numbers, but the starting line mattered more than the math. The mind worked to defend the badge at war. The platforms amplified the split. Recommendation chains learned the badge and served more of it. A person who liked one anti-mandate post saw 5 more. A person who liked one pro-mandate explainer saw 5 more. The room got louder, the tunnel got narrower, the slow mind had less to work with. Watch the dashboard. Cognition bends when identity sets the frame. Base rates and causal logic give way to motivated reasoning. Behavior shifts towards selective reading and selective sharing. System incentives reward engagement spikes around team markers. Discourse degrades as arguments become identity theater. Now the measurements. Misperception gap, the distance between what groups believe the other side believes and what the other side actually believes. Cross-partisan reading rate, how often people open credible sources from outside their camp. Belief update events after identity-safe framing, whether reframing a claim to respect group values increases acceptance of strong evidence. Base rate accuracy on simple risk questions, whether people can keep denominators straight when the topic is emotionally loaded. None of these numbers tell you who was right on every policy. They show how minds behave when speed and identity set the terms. They show why the same fact pattern can yield opposite convictions. They show why argument feels like attack when a claim is sewn to a jersey. The lesson cuts deeper than one crisis. When the fast mind rules and identity guards the gate, evidence becomes a prop. The slow mind becomes a guest. Public reason turns into team sport, and the scoreboard stops tracking truth. 7. When harmony hurts groupthink and the price of silence. Organizations love harmony. Meetings run on time. Slides look clean. Heads nod. It feels safe. It feels efficient. But there is a name for harmony that kills judgment. Groupthink. Groupthink is not about friendship. It is a pattern. Illusion of unanimity. Pressure on dissenters. Self-censorship. Gatekeepers who filter bad news before it reaches the room. The goal becomes agreement, not accuracy. The product is confidence without grounding. A U.S. case shows the cost. January 1986. The Challenger launch. Engineers warned about O-rings at low temperatures. Data were thin but worrisome. The forecast was cold. Management faced schedule pressure and public expectations. A delay felt risky to careers, not to safety. The conversation narrowed. The caution memo lost to the calendar. The shuttle broke apart after liftoff. 7 people died. Look at the pattern, not the villain. Signals were there. The room did not metabolize them. Dissenters were present. Their doubt was framed as delay, not as data. Risk became a public relations variable. The culture normalized deviance. Past near misses were treated as proof that the system was robust. The group chose harmony over evidence. The cost was irreversible. Another case shows the repair. February 2003. Colombia. Foam struck the wing during ascent. Some engineers asked for on-orbit imaging. The request did not gain traction. The shuttle was lost during re-entry. Afterward, the agency rebuilt parts of its decision process. Independent technical authority, a formal channel for dissent, an engineering and safety center to run tests the program office did not ask for. Flight readiness reviews that documented unresolved concerns, red teams with permission to be unpopular. Culture did not change by memo. It changed by structure. Speak Up had a path. Dissent had a form. Independent eyes could test the mainstream conclusion. The goal was not endless delay. The goal was to make disagreement cheap before failure made it expensive. Watch the dashboard. Cognition improves when anomalies are logged and tested, not explained away. Behavior improves when leaders ask for the last, most uncomfortable point before a decision. System incentives improve when careers are protected for raising risks, not only for meeting dates. Discourse improves when the meeting rule is criticize ideas, not people, and when minority reports are preserved, not erased. Now the measurements. Minority opinion logging, how often a major decision includes a written dissent and what happens to it. Red team frequency, how many significant projects receive an independent challenge review before go-no-go. Decision reversals after dissent, the share of outcomes that change because a minority case surfaced new evidence. Anomaly closure rate, the percentage of known issues tracked to verified resolution before milestone approvals. Psychological safety score, whether people believe they can raise a concern without punishment. Time on risk, how much of each readiness review is spent on the sharpest open questions, not the victory lap. None of these numbers tell a team what to decide. They reveal whether a team earns its decisions. Harmony feels good. It does not prove truth. A strong organization is not one with no dissent. It is one where dissent is protected, processed, and, when it is right, allowed to win. In that kind of room, confidence comes last, evidence comes first, and silence is never the price of belonging. 8. The quiet duty ethics, spirit, and the disciplined crowd. Critical thinking is not only a skill, it is a duty. It is a moral choice to place truth above comfort. It is a spiritual choice to place freedom above applause. When a culture forgets that, clarity fades first. Conscience fades next. Detach the self from the stance. You are not your opinion. An opinion is a tool, not an identity badge. Tools are tested, improved, or discarded. Identities are defended. When ideas turn into uniforms, evidence becomes an enemy. When ideas remain tools, evidence becomes a teacher. Call this stance intellectual conscience. It is the willingness to know when you do not know. It is the refusal to sell certainty for status. It is the habit of holding conviction with an open hand. Without that conscience, every argument becomes a loyalty ritual. With it, argument becomes a search. Now a case about courage. In 2021, Frances Haugen brought internal documents from a major platform to the public record. The files described incentive structures that rewarded engagement even when engagement harmed users and societies. The point here is not a full trial of the company. The point is the structure of the act. A person traded safety for clarity. She told the truth about the machine that shapes attention. She paid a price to surface a hidden cost. Watch the dashboard in this light. Cognition rises when insiders reveal how systems really work. Behavior changes only when the reveal reaches the same volume as the hype. System incentives shift when boards, regulators, and designers rewrite the metric of success. Discourse matures when the public can debate architecture, not just anecdotes. So we measure what courage achieves. Whistleblower protection strength, whether law and policy shield the person who exposes systemic harm. Retaliation rate, whether careers are punished after responsible disclosure. Time to policy change, how long between a credible reveal and a visible reform. Prominence parity for reforms, whether fixes receive attention comparable to the practices they replace. Independent audit frequency. How often outside eyes test the claims the platform makes about its own impact. Courage matters. Method matters too. Here is a case where the crowd became a microscope, not a megaphone. Bellingcat, an open-source investigation collective, mapped events like the downing of Flight MH17 using public traces, photos, shadows, weather, metadata, landmarks on satellite tiles. They treated the internet as a crime scene. They published methods, not just conclusions. They invited verification, not just belief. This is the opposite of mob certainty. It is disciplined crowdsourcing. Claims are geolocated, time-stamped, and cross-sourced. Citations are granular. Errors are logged and corrected in public. The community is bound by rules, not vibes. The result is not noise. The result is evidence that others can test. Watch the dashboard again. Cognition is served because the work is teachable and repeatable. Behavior improves because readers can check the steps and change their minds for reasons, not for tribes. System incentives shift when mainstream outlets cite OSINT findings and demand similar transparency from official sources. Discourse improves when arguments move from who said it to show me where it was taken and when. So we track the health of disciplined crowds. Third-party verification rate, how often independent analysts reproduce the findings. Court and inquiry uptake, whether the work enters legal records or formal investigations. Mainstream citation count, how many outlets rely on the evidence and link to methods. Correction ledger quality, whether mistakes are documented with clear fixes. Method transparency index, how much of the pipeline is open to scrutiny. Put the two cases side by side. One person risks status to surface the cost of a system. One community binds itself to method so the crowd does not drift into rumor. Together they point to the same lesson. Design beats intention. Incentives beat slogans. Without conscience and method, collective becomes a multiplier for error. With conscience and method, collective becomes a multiplier for truth. Name the contrast cleanly. Collective stupidity is fast certainty subsidized by bad incentives. Collective wisdom is slow clarity disciplined by good rules. The first sells heat, the second earns light. This brings us back to ethics and spirit. Ethics asks what we owe each other in speech. Spirit asks what we owe ourselves in honesty. The answer is the same. Do not make a god out of your first impression. Do not make a prison out of your group. Admit what the evidence admits. Withhold what it does not. The culture you get is the sum of what it pays for. If the market buys outrage, you will get outrage. If the law shields truth tellers, you will get truth. If the press rewards methods, you will get methods. If the crowd accepts correction, you will get memory that can heal. Critical thinking will not return with a slogan. It will return when conscience and method share the same stage. When courage to reveal meets rules that verify. When we stop mistaking noise for depth. When we stop mistaking belonging for truth. The oath is simple. Do not worship the frame. Do not worship the tribe. Do not worship the rush. Honor the fact. Honor the method. Honor the human capacity to change its mind without losing its worth. Only then does freedom stop fading. Only then does the light stay on. This was never about being clever. It was about being free. Collective stupidity is not an insult. It is a system state. Falsehood outruns repair. Identity outruns evidence. Performance outruns dialogue. Incentives outrun conscience. We named the pattern so we could measure it. We measured it so we could see it. You saw it in a tabloid cover that traveled like a rocket. You saw it in a 13-second clip that froze a nation. You saw it in feeds that pay for heat and in frames that shrink the world and call it the news. You saw it in classrooms that prize answers over arguments and in teams that traded dissent for harmony and paid with lives. You also saw the repair debate rooms that pay for reasons, whistleblowers who trade safety for clarity, and crowds that bind themselves to method and turn into a microscope, not a mob. Design beats intention. Incentives beat slogans. When a culture pays for speed and certainty, truth grows thin. When a culture pays for method and conscience, truth grows roots. Freedom does not vanish with a bang. It fades when we worship the frame, the tribe, and the rush. It returns when we honor the fact, honor the method, and keep the human power to change a mind without losing a self. If this struck a nerve, share it with one person who still thinks. Subscribe if you want the rest of the series, measured and unhurried. Tell me what we missed and what the evidence demands next. Leave one clear line in the comments you want to survive the noise. Not louder, clearer. That is how the light stays on.